Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now we come to the part 2 of our learning material about Australia. Sekarang saya masuk ke bagian 2 pembelajaran cross culture understanding yang membahas tentang negara Australia. Oke, sekarang saya coba share materinya. I'm going to repeat again about the lesson. We were talking about, let's see, I want to make it bigger. Okay. Focus on country, Australia. We have discussed about this one. This is the map of Australia. This is the picture of Australia symbols. And we also have discovered about Australia flag. This is the location of where we can find Australia. It's right over here next to Indonesia. And in the southern part of this world map, this is the area of Australia, Western Australia, Northern Territory, Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, and Tasmania. We will talk more about Australia in brief, so I will stop the PowerPoint right over here and I will continue my description about Australia in the next slides. Okay, so now please bear with me. I'm going to talk about Australia in brief. This is the slides. I make it bigger, full screen mode. Okay. All right, so now we are here showing about the population of Australia. We just discovered about Australia's national symbols. Now we talk about the population. In terms of the population, it says that Australians come from a rich variety of cultural, okay, let me zoom it. Australians come from a rich variety of cultural, ethnic, linguistics, and religious backgrounds, while Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are the original inhabitants of the land. Immigrants from about 200 countries also call Australia home. Jadi orang-orang Australia ini terdiri dari orang Aborigin, kemudian orang yang tinggal di Torres Strait Islander, serta orang-orang imigran yang berasal dari sekitar 200 negara yang menjadi warga negara Australia. Kemudian pada tahun 1970, mayoritas imigran yang datang ke Australia berasal dari Eropa. Pada tahun tersebut, Australia menerima banyak imigran dari Asia, dan sejak tahun 1956, sejumlah imigran dari Afrika dan dari Timur Tengah bertambah banyak. Kebijakan imigrasi Australia welcomes people from all over the world and does not discriminate on racial, cultural, or religious grounds. Australians embrace the spectrum of religious beliefs in Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, and other places of worship are found in almost every major city. Jadi setiap tempat dan kota-kota besar yang ada di Australia membahas dan menerapkan kehidupan beragama tergantung dari keagamaan dan kepercayaan dari warga negara Australia tersebut. Australia is modern, contemporary, and multicultural, and this is reflected in its buildings, fashion, recreation, and foods. Nah, kita lihat di sini ada gambar keluarga Australia yang sedang liburan di Bondi Beach, Sydney. This is so exciting, don't you think? This is an interesting fact about Australia. English is the national language, but more than 300 languages are spoken in Australian homes. The most common are Mandarin, Italian, Arabic, Cantonese, and Greek. Oh, this is so exciting. So Bahasa nasional utama yang ada di Australia adalah bahasa Inggris, tapi ada sekitar 300 bahasa lainnya yang juga digunakan oleh warga negara Australia dan paling umum adalah bahasa Mandarin, bahasa Italia, bahasa Arab, kemudian bahasa Cantonese. Cantonese ini bagian dari bahasa Cina juga tapi lebih ke Taiwan dan juga bahasa Greek Yunani. Kemudian kita lanjutkan. Ya. Indigenous Australia. Nah, di sini apa itu Indigenous Australia? Di sini adalah Aboriginal people in Australia are the custodians of one of the oldest continuous living cultures in the world. Archaeological evidence suggests that Australia has been continuously inhabited for more than 60,000 years. Artinya adalah orang-orang Aboriginal di Australia adalah orang-orang yang hidup dengan kebudayaan tertua, salah satu budaya tertua di dunia, yaitu 60.000 tahun sebelum Australia ditemukan, mereka telah tinggal di Australia. Nah, ini berdasarkan bukti-bukti dari arkeologis, yaitu orang-orang aborigin. Another distinct group of Melanesian origin are the Torres Strait Islander peoples who first settled on islands north of the mainland between the tip of Queensland and Papua New Guinea thousands of years ago. Ini saya baca dulu semuanya ya, nanti saya bahas satu-satu. Today, most Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people live in cities and towns. Many people still remain on their traditional lands and maintain aspects of their traditional lifestyles. In a modern-day Australia, prior to European settlement, it is estimated that around 250 different languages were spoken. While Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages remain strong in some communities, it is estimated that more than 100 languages have been lost and around 110 are endangered. Efforts are underway to keep language strong in communities and to revive vulnerable languages. Indigenous culture is diverse and strong and makes a vital contribution to Australia's national identity. Jadi di tulisan ini menjelaskan bahwa ada kelompok lainnya yang juga berdomisili di Australia sebelum negara Australia ditemukan, yaitu kelompok yang disebut Torres Strait Islander. Mereka ini tergolong kepada berasal dari Melanesia. Yang pertama tinggal di bagian utara dari Australia, yaitu antara puncak Queensland dan juga Papua New Guinea ribuan tahun yang lalu katanya. Nah, sekarang orang-orang Aborigin dan Torres Strait Islander ini tinggal di kota-kota besar dan di kota-kota kecil. Banyak dari mereka masih berada di tanah atau area tradisi mereka dan juga masih mempertahankan gaya hidup tradisional mereka dan disesuaikan dengan kehidupan modern yang ada di Australia. Kemudian setelah settlement dari Eropa, diperkirakan sekitar 250 bahasa berbeda digunakan di Australia. Sementara bahasa Aborigin dan Torres Strait Islander adalah bahasa yang cukup kuat di beberapa komunitas. Diperkirakan sekitar lebih dari 100 bahasa telah hilang dan juga sekitar 110 bahasa yang hampir punah. Yang punah. Usaha-usaha negara dan pemerintah telah diterapkan untuk menjaga bahasa tersebut tetap kuat di komunitas atau tetap digunakan dan juga bisa mempertahankan dari kepunahan. Budaya indigenous ini berbagai macam dan kuat dan membuat kontribusi yang sangat utama terhadap identitas nasional negara Australia. Kita lanjutkan. Ini ada beberapa contoh. Indigenous people contribute in many areas, including the arts, media, academia, politics, sport, and business. The 2014 Australian of the Year, Adam Kudus, a professional Australian rules football player, and Atnya Matantha, man from the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. Okay, let me read this one first. A national referendum held on 27 May 1967 removed references from the Australian Constitution which discriminated against Indigenous people and excluded Aboriginal people from being counted in the census. The referendum saw the highest yes vote ever recorded in a referendum in Australia, with just over 90% of Australians voting for the change. The referendum and the High Court decision on 3 June 1992, which recognized native title and Indigenous peoples' entitlement to the possession, occupation, use and enjoyment of the traditional lands are important milestones in Australian history. Jadi orang-orang Aboriginal di sini sangat berperan terhadap negara Australia. Salah satunya adalah tahun 2014, Adam Goodes, salah satu orang Australia terpilih tahun 2014. Dia adalah pemain professional player Australian Rules, kemudian yang juga dari Flinders Range bernama, dia juga seorang pria Anyamathanha dari Australia Selatan. Jadi pada tahun 1167, orang-orang indigenous dan orang-orang aborigin ini tidak dilibatkan dalam hak pemilihan umum di negara Australia. Tapi kemudian setelah adanya referendum di Australia, pada tahun 1992, tepatnya 3 Juni 1992, orang Aboriginal dan juga orang-orang indigenous yang tadi saya sebutkan mulai dimasukkan ke dalam orang-orang yang native title, jadi orang-orang asli dari Australia. In 2008, the Australian Parliament passed a motion of apology to Australia's Indigenous peoples for past mistreatment and injustice, especially the stolen generation who were Indigenous children forcibly removed from their families. Today, the Australian government is committed to working in partnership with Indigenous people, families and communities to make sure children go to school every day, adults have jobs and communities are safe places to live. Jadi pemerintah Australia ini kemudian menerapkan apology to Australia, artinya sikap permohonan maaf pemerintah Australia terhadap orang-orang aborigin dan juga orang-orang yang indigenous people, karena perlakuan pemerintah Australia di zaman lampau sebelumnya yang menyebabkan terjadinya stolen generation. Stolen generation ini adalah anak-anak indigenous children yang membuat mereka harus terpisah dari keluarga dan orang tua mereka. That was quite tough to live in Australia then. Today katanya pemerintah Australia itu berbeda. Pemerintah Australia telah berkomitmen untuk meningkatkan partnership dengan orang-orang indigenous sehingga mereka bisa berhak pergi ke sekolah dan mendapatkan pendidikan yang layak. To achieve this, the government is working closely with Indigenous Australians to ensure that better services and outcomes are delivered on the ground. The Australian government is also committed to achieving recognition for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Australia's constitution. Okay, that music doesn't come from my recording because I did not intentionally to record the music. There was a car outside, jadi ada mobil di luar main musik ya. So that music does not part of this video. Alright, katanya to achieve this, untuk mencapai ini, pemerintah Australia bekerja dengan seksama dengan orang-orang indigenous Australia untuk memastikan bahwa servis terbaik diberikan kepada orang Australia. Jadi pemerintah Australia berkomitmen untuk mencapai recognition for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders sesuai dengan konstitusi dari negara Australia. Okay, I stop share here. Okay. Stop share. Information about Australia is interesting to be learned, especially when you learn cross-culture understanding. Now, let me continue my presentation. Okay. I have talked about Indigenous Australia. Now I will come to the point about Government of Australia. Let me zoom it for you. Okay, so no, not this one. Try to zoom it. Okay, okay. So in terms of the government, Australia was one of the first countries to establish democracy in the modern world. In the mid-19th century, Australian colonies set about writing constitution which produced democratically elected parliaments. Jadi Australia ini adalah salah satu negara yang terkategori kepada salah satu negara yang mendirikan ya establish demokrasi di dunia modern. Pada abad pertengahan ke-19, Australian colonies set about writing constitution yang menghasilkan parlemen terpilih. From dari tahun 1850 hingga tahun 1890, when few other countries in the world were democratic, the Australian colonies progressively established universal male suffrage and were also among the first to give women to vote. Australian democracy, jadi Australia ini pertama kali telah memberikan wanita hak untuk memilih dalam pemilu pada tahun 1890. Kemudian, Australian democracy has at its heart the following four defining values. First one, freedom of election and being elected, freedom of assembly and political participation, freedom of speech, expression, and religious belief, rule of law, and other basic human rights. Jadi 5 nilai inilah yang menjadi poin utama dari demokrasi yang ada di Australia. Pertama adalah kebebasan, freedom. Freedom ini maksudnya kebebasan, tapi bukan kebebasan dalam hal kebebasan absolut ya. Kebebasan dalam memilih dan juga dipilih, kebebasan untuk bersatu, berkelompok, berkumpul, dan juga dalam hal partisipasi politis, kebebasan dalam berpendapat, kemudian ekspresi dalam berekspresi, dan kebebasan dalam hal keyakinan secara keagamaan. Rule of law, dan terakhir adalah other basic human rights. The Australian government follows the British Westminster tradition. The Governor-General, representing the Crown, exercises the supreme executive power of Commonwealth. Jadi, pemerintah Australia ini mengikuti instruksi yang ada dari Commonwealth UK, yang ada di Inggris. Kemudian kita lanjutkan. In practice, pada prakteknya, the Governor-General bertindak sebagai advisor of the head of the government, the Prime Minister, and other ministers. Jadi, Governor-General ini bertindak dalam rangka sebagai penasihat terhadap kepala negara, kemudian Perdana Menteri, dan juga other ministers. Jadi dia ikut kepada Queen of Elizabeth. Prime Minister leads a cabinet of ministers, each of whom has responsibility for a portfolio of government duties. Commonwealth ministers, including the Prime Minister, are appointed by the Governor-General on the advice of the leader of a political party or coalition which represents the majority of the House of Representatives in the Federal Parliament. Similar systems operate in the states and territories. There are also more than 560 local councils across the country. Ini menarik ya. Jadi Perdana Menteri memimpin kabinet dari menteri-menteri. Masing-masing menteri tersebut memiliki kewajiban terhadap portofolio dari tugas-tugas pemerintah. Para menteri Commonwealth, termasuk Perdana Menteri, ditunjuk langsung oleh Gubernur-Jenderal atas saran dari political party, koalisi partai politik yang merepresentasi mayoritas dari House of Representatives di Parlemen Federal. Sistem yang sama juga beroperasi di tingkat wilayah dan juga teritorial. Ada sekitar 560 local councils yang tersebar di seluruh wilayah Australia. The 1901 Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia sets out the powers of the Commonwealth and states. Each state has its own written constitution. The High Court of Australia and the Federal Court of Australia have the authority to interpret constitutional provisions. Under the Constitution, the legislative power of the Commonwealth is vested in the federal parliament. The parliament makes laws, authorizes the government to spend public money, scrutinizes government activities, and is a forum for debate on national issues. All Australian citizens over the age of 18 must vote in both federal and state elections. So it says that konstitusi tahun 1901 dari Australia ini merancang, sets out, men-setting kekuasaan untuk Commonwealth dan juga state. Setiap state memiliki konstitusi mereka secara tertulis. Apa saja state-nya yaitu Western Australia, Northern Territory, kemudian New South Wales, Queensland, and the last one is South Australia. The High Court of Australia, jadi High Court of Australia ini maksudnya sidang tertinggi Australia dan juga Federal Court of Australia memiliki otoritas untuk menginterpretasi atau memaknai provisions, aturan-aturan atau batasan-batasan dari konstitusi. Di bawah konstitusi, kekuasaan legislatif dari Commonwealth vested berada di parlemen federal. Parlemen membuat hukum, mengotorisasi pemerintah atau memberikan legal kepada pemerintah untuk membelanjakan uang negara, scrutinizes government activities, dan juga forum untuk debat di tingkat nasional. Setiap warga negara Australia di atas usia 18 tahun harus memiliki hak suara dalam pemilihan tingkat federal dan juga dalam pemilihan di tingkat state. So that is interesting. All right, now this is interesting fact. Did you know Australia is a constitutional monarchy? Constitutional because the powers and procedures of the Australian government are defined by a written constitution, and monarchy because Australia's head of state is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So Australia ini ternyata bentuk pemerintahnya adalah monarki konstitusional. Kenapa disebut konstitusi? Karena kekuasaan dan prosedur dari pemerintahan Australia diatur oleh konstitusi secara tertulis. Makanya itu disebut sebagai constitutional. Sementara terkategori kepada monarki karena kepala pemerintah Australia adalah Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Jadi langsung kepada Queen of Elizabeth II, Australia. Nah, Parliament and Government, di sini 14 million plus Australians vote for federal representatives, kemudian 226 federal representatives, 76 senators in the Senate, 150 members in the House of Representatives, and 50% plus support needed to form government. Okay, so that is the fact of information about the government of Australia. Now, we would like to come to the next point about the economy of Australia. What is interesting about the economy of Australia? Known as one of the great agricultural, mining, and energy producers, Australia has one of the world's most open and varied economies with a highly educated workforce and extensive services sector. Jadi Australia ini ternyata sangat terkenal ya dalam hal bisnis dan juga energi mining. Kemudian Australia is rated AAA dari secara global. Okay. Right. So now let me try to talk about this one. This is more interesting. Ternyata ada 5 aspek dari bisnis Australia. The first one is merchandise export, agricultural products, jadi produk pertanian, kemudian foreign students tertiary education, kemudian Australia's investment fund assets, kemudian merchandise export, fuels and mining, dan terakhir adalah international tourism received. Okay. Nah, itu dari segi ekonomi. Nah, sekarang kita masuk. This is cute kangaroo, and this is the. Let me see what is that. This is the Gunlom Waterfall Creek, Kakadu National Park, Eleno Agriropolus Tourism Australia. Oke, nah sekarang kita lihat ini ada environment. Australia juga mendukung, ternyata Australia adalah the leading Antarctic nation. Kemudian ini juga beberapa tempat, coral reef. This is so exciting. This is Opera House in Sydney. Kemudian looking outward. And many interesting things that we can talk about Australia. And what is the most important part that we need to look closely in relation to Australia and Indonesia is from this about foreign aid. Australia has helped Indonesia for some aspect. Australia juga telah menyediakan 3,8 billion, see, $3.8 billion in official development assistance to developing nations, termasuk Indonesia. Nah, kemudian kita lihat tourism in Australia is interesting karena international visitors spend more than 248 million nights in Australia in 2015. Kemudian, this is interesting. This is the dairy product about Australia, and this is the Sappelsfield Vines. This is wine. Jadi mereka orang Australia suka minum anggur. Ini juga Porches Way, makan bersama di atas piring seperti ini. And then Australia has Yarra Valley Dairy and Yering Station Winery. This is wine. Ini dairy, ini dari keju. Ini juga olive. Okay. Nah, what about the education study in Australia? Education in Australia's largest emphasis export. Di tahun 2016, sekitar lebih dari 440 international students were studying and living in Australia. Ini menambah 19,5 billion US dollar ke ekonomi Australia. More than half of Australia's universities are listed in the Times Higher Education World University Ranking, and 6 are in the top 100. Okay. International students, pelajar Indonesia banyak di sana, jadi kita bisa melihat fakta-fakta menarik. Ada international students, kemudian English language training, Australia Awards, the New Colombo Plan, Indo-Pacific region, ini termasuk Indonesia di sini. Kemudian, so you're going to read further about this right over here in this website. www.australiaawards.gov.au and then www.dfat.gov.au/new/Colombo/plan. Okay, so that is the information about education in Australia. Many international students coming to Australia, and Australia is the third source for international education. Jadi negara ketiga terbaik yang dipilih oleh pelajar internasional di seluruh dunia untuk studi di Australia. Mungkin yang pertama adalah perhaps United States, and second one is the UK, and the third one is the Australia. And defense and security, this is as you can see, ya setiap negara punya pertahanan dan keamanannya juga, termasuk juga Indonesia. So I believe that you might be so interested more about this one. Kemudian tentara Australia juga, let me make it bigger. This one, tentara Australia, volunteers membantu warga yang ada di Solomon Islands setelah terjadinya banjir bandang tahun 2014. Australia also has helped Indonesia when tsunami happened in Aceh, and Australia also has helped Indonesia when earthquake happened in Padang last 2000. I think it was in 2009, dan juga di tahun 2007, Australia has helped that condition together with other countries such as Swiss, France, United States of America, and Singapore. Many other countries have helped Indonesia at that time. So Indonesian government also needs to help other countries whenever their citizens face problems from the natural disasters. Society and culture, now this is interesting. Now we closely connect to cross-culture understanding at this point. So in Australia, education starts in the years before formal schooling, with many childcare services and preschools receiving government funding. Jadi ternyata di Australia tersebut TK, pelajaran TK, preschool ini mendapatkan dana dari pemerintah. Jadi anak-anak TK tidak perlu membayar belajar. Education start in it before, jadi sebelum sekolah formal, anak-anak Australia telah belajar di tingkat TK. Kemudian, Australian students participate, let me make it bigger, okay. Australian students participate in formal school education from the age of 5 or 6 to around 18, with many going on to tertiary education. The public and private education sectors are working together to close the gap on Indigenous disadvantage and improve outcomes in Indigenous education. Australia's vocational education and training system provides students with the skills required in modern labour market and delivers competency-based training that is practical and career-oriented. The Australian higher education system has both public and private universities. Some universities have campuses in other countries. There are Australian branches of overseas universities and other higher education providers as well. Jadi ternyata pelajar yang studi di Australia berpartisipasi dari usia 5 tahun atau 6 tahun sekitar usia 18 tahun. Dan banyak dari mereka melanjutkan ke perguruan tinggi atau tertiary education. Kemudian sektor pendidikan baik itu publik maupun swasta bekerja sama memberikan kesempatan belajar kepada anak-anak di Australia untuk sekolah sampai ke tingkat perguruan tinggi. So, ada sistem vokasional, kemudian training yang sangat membantu pelajar Australia untuk meraih pekerjaan mereka di masa depan. Kemudian at this point we can see this is the system of education in Australia. You see, we have Indigenous school children from the Newport School in the Northern Territory droving community cattle. Nah, ini cattle, ini ada sapi-sapi. Kemudian, Australia is home to some of the most geographically isolated and remote communities in the world. Jadi, Australia ini adalah rumah dari banyak komunitas secara geografis terisolasi di dunia. Jadi School of Air, ini salah satu contohnya. Okay. Now let's see in here. Di sini adalah urutan pendidikan, tahapan pendidikan yang ada di sistem pendidikan Australia. Pertama, kita lihat bermula dari primary education, yaitu kindergarten, ini artinya TK, yaitu usia 6 tahun. Kemudian secondary education, masuk ke tingkat SD, year 7 sampai 12. Ini kalau SD 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, kita kan 6 tahun, jadi sampai usia 12 tahun. Kemudian setelah tamat SD, masuk ke tingkatan ini. Ada vocational education and training, ada private education and training, kemudian ada university. Nah, kalau kita biasanya, di sini ada junior high school, kemudian ada senior high school. Jadi, kalau kita SMP 3 tahun, ditambah juga SMA 3 tahun, jadinya kita 6 tahun. Seharusnya kita sudah memiliki diploma. Nah, ditambah pula 4 tahun, itu kuliah bachelor's. Nah, jadi dalam segi pendidikan kita banyak memakan waktu sebenarnya. Ya. Jadi sini ada setelah secondary education, 12 tahun mereka lanjut ke vokasi, ini kalau langsung pekerjaan. Jadi certificate, advanced certificate, associate diploma, kemudian di sini diploma, bachelor's, graduate diploma, and then PhD, master's. I'm here, master's. Jadi ini di tingkat universitas. So it's quite interesting to know more about this one. Jadi bagi yang mau studi di Australia, pahami ini perbedaannya. Meskipun saya belum pernah ke Australia, tapi informasi ini sangat penting dan menarik. Kemudian lebih lanjut kita lihat lagi. Secara inovasi, ini we can read all of this. In Australia telah menghasilkan 14 Nobel laureates bernama Brian P. Smith di bidang fisika tahun 2011, kemudian Elizabeth H. Blackburn di bidang fisiologi atau kedokteran tahun 2009, Barry J. Marshall di bidang kedokteran 2005, dan J. Robin Warren di bidang kedokteran tahun 2005. Kemudian, siapa ternyata yang menemukan Wi-Fi? Yang menemukan Wi-Fi adalah ini. Let me zoom it. 5, okay, this one. 5.0 scientists invented wireless LAN technology, this is known as Wi-Fi, which is now used in over 5 billion devices around the world. Nah, jadi ternyata adalah orang Australia yang menemukan C05 ini ya, 5.0 scientists. Ternyata orang Australia loh yang menemukan Wi-Fi. Nah, sekarang kita lihat invensi Australia, black box flight recorder, bionic ear, kemudian high speed Wi-Fi, Google Maps ini ternyata ditemukan oleh orang Australia, Gardasil cervical cancer vaccine, influenza treatment drug Valenza, Aspro, pacemaker, plastic disposable syringe, dual flush toilet. Dual flush toilet ini ternyata yang bisa langsung pencet itu juga ditemukan oleh orang Australia. Anti-counterfeiting technology for banknotes. Yang terakhir adalah spray on skin for burns victim. Jadi orang luka bakar, jadi bisa langsung disemprot ke kulit. Ini juga invensi atau penemuan dari ilmuwan yang ada di Australia. So this is very impressive for Australian education. Now let's see, we move on. Now that is the innovation. Okay, wow, this is great, this is interesting. What is this about? This is the square kilometer array will be the largest and most capable radio telescope ever constructed. Nah, ini salah satu bentuk dari kemajuan inovasi yang ada di Australia. Ini dikembangkan untuk teleskop radio di dua lokasi, ya di South Africa dan juga di Australia. Okay, and then we move on. Ini tentang olahraga di Australia. Lebih dari 140 olahraga nasional yang ada di Australia. Oke, seperti ini Australian soccer. Jadi di sini soccer, olahraga soccer, and then soccer, and then we have here sport commission, boxing, and this one bicycle. And then we have, this is the Creative Australia about the art. Did you know? Okay, so I think I have watched a Kate Blanchett movie. It was in the, I like her appearance and character in the movie of the house with the clock on its wall. It's about the mystical story for children, and I really like that. So Kate Blanchett is the Australian character. I think together with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman. Yeah, so, and also the actor of Thor, you know. So I really appreciate their acting. And this one is, I don't know, Bangora performer Leonard Nickelodeon of Earth and Sky, Bangora Dance Theater, so this is very exciting. Nice, it's very artificial. Yeah, I do agree that the human body is beautiful, male or female, depending on how we value the artistic representation of that meaning. Unless you try to mix the meanings between male and female, so that will be, we come to the other talk about gender. So, but this, I'm talking about art, seni. But you also need to remember that every country has its moral values, and every country has its religious condition, religious art. So you do not need to mix between one of those things. Jadi jangan dicampur baur ya antara seni dengan agama. Mungkin agama tertentu melarang seni seperti ini, tapi this is just art. Di tingkat global internasional kita menghargai yang namanya perbedaan seni dan nilai pandang, sudut pandang. And we really appreciate that. As long as it is only for art only. It's not to exploit human body to the extent that it comes to slavery. Okay, so this is the operas. This is Circus of Oz 2014 Circus. And then Mona, Museum of Old and New Art in Hobart. Museum of Old and New Art. Opera Australia's. And this is Aboriginal Memorial Art at the National Gallery of Australia. There's a lot of information going on about Australian music, visual arts, and performing arts, creative industries, Screen Australia support, and talented visual effects. So a lot of things that you can find information more in here from this website, www.australiacouncil.gov.au and www.screenaustralia.gov.au. So a lot of interesting things you can find about arts in Australia. Healthcare. This is the healthcare. Australia's system has world-class in effectiveness and efficacy. That's what this information says. You can see the picture and media and communication. Okay, this is the fun fact. Ini informasi menarik bagi pelajar Indonesia. 83% dari populasi Australia memiliki akses ke internet. Jadi menarik ya. This is that's good news. I hope one day Indonesia has that kind of access as well. But well, I don't know for sure. Maybe in years later. And this one is Telstra telecommunication tower in Canberra. Only one here. We don't see any other tower around here, but I think even though this is only one tower, but it works pretty functional, I guess. So that's about the society. Okay, hold on. Okay, now we come to the next one. It's about visa and immigration requirement. You're going to apply for visa in Australia. Quarantines. Okay, so this is quarantine now. It's very clean. So Australia has played out a very nice and what it says. To protect human health in Australia's agriculture and tourism industries as well as the environment, Australia has stringent quarantine requirements. Jadi semuanya dikarantina ternyata ya. Okay. Okay, it's already 47 minutes. I have talked to you about Australia. So this is the source. From Australia, you can find this booklet should be attributed Australia in brief, Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I'm using this material simply for explaining about Australia. I do not sell anything. I do not sell any information at all. So every information that I shared to this video is true and it is real, it is relevant, and it is based on facts, right? So, okay, so what's this? Okay, this is interesting. As a young girl, Takut Rosie Tako walked with her auntie and sister along the Canning Stock route to Billy Luna in Western Australia. The Canning Stock route runs through hundreds of kilometers of rock sandhill country. The long, reverberating lines in this painting represent the high red sand hills, or Gilgi, which are found throughout much of the Great Sandy Desert in Jakarta, which is the this is the Taku Rossi platform. That's the art. Very, we need to appreciate. Guys, this is the source. Australian Government, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade Australia. Jadi ini adalah sumber valid dan terpercaya yang saya gunakan dalam membahas tentang negara Australia in brief. Okay, so I stop share here. Alright, so that is an interesting information about Australia. Even though I have never traveled to Australia, but I found that Australia is one of the interesting countries to be visited. I have visited the United States of America as a country for me to study in my master's degree. And perhaps one day I might travel to Australia, or I travel back again to the US, or travel to Saudi Arabia, or maybe travel to Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea. I have traveled to Malaysia and Singapore, but I really wish that I can go around the world to get a book inside of cross-culture understanding, because I love to meet people, I love to appreciate different cultures, and I love to see children in many different parts of the world, and I love knowledge, and I love good people with heart. Okay, so if you have any question or suggestion about this video, please write down in the comment section. I'm going to read your question and your feedback about my explanation. If there's anything that you need to add, ada yang mau ditambahkan, especially if you are in Australia that I explained about the country, you may add more information in the comment section. Bagi mahasiswa yang belajar CCU dengan saya, be ready. You're going to talk about Australia in about 5 minutes, each one of you. Then I'm going to compile your videos into one video and I'm going to upload it to YouTube. All right, so please be prepared. And thank you for listening to my explanation. If there is a bad quality of this video or my voice doesn't sound clear to you, I'm sorry, but that's the condition that I need to bear with me. And this, I am recording this in my house. Everything's okay and everything is good and I'm healthy. COVID-19 free. I hope that COVID-19 will be gone soon enough and we're going back to normal. Everyone is healthy, everyone is great, and everyone is living their life in such happy and full of contentment. And we can help each other out more than we could just during the pandemic. All right, thank you very much for your attention. I'll see you again next time in the next video about countries of the world, and probably in part 15 or part 16 of this semester. Okay? All right, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have a good day.